Condemnation and condolences today as world leaders react to reports that Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has died. Navalny's wife, Yulia Navalnaya, spoke today at the Munich Security Conference, saying no one can trust the Russian government because it is lying constantly. But she promises they will be brought to justice soon if her husband is dead. Someone who knows what it's like to fight an authoritarian regime is the exiled Belarusian opposition leader, Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya. She ran against Alexander Lukashenko in 2020 after her husband attempted to, but was jailed. After Lukashenko was declared the winner, she was forced into exile where she remains in Lithuania. While she was handed a 15-year prison term for treason, her husband remains in prison but hasn't been heard from in a year. Here's our conversation from earlier today. Sviatlana Tsikhanouskaya joins me right now from Munich. Thank you so much for taking the time. I wanted to start off by saying that you have said that you have no doubt that Alexei Navalny was killed by the Putin regime. Why don't you have any doubt about that?
You know, of course, I suppose that some investigation will be made on the reasons of death of Navalny, but you know, put an innocent person in prison and torturing him and put him in punishment cells many times in a row, it's already murder. So it doesn't matter what the results of investigation will be, but it's regime who is killing people, political opponents in prisons like Gulag.
You have compared Putin to the president of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko, saying in order to maintain power, they get rid of opponents by any means. Are you worried for your own safety, even though right now you're living in exile?
So first of all, Lukashenko is not the president of Belarus. He seized power back in 2020, and since then he launched brutal repressions to suppress his opponents. Of course, in such a brutal environment inside the country, but also those who fled Belarus because of repressions, we all can't feel safe. In Belarus or in exile, it doesn't matter because regime wants to take revenge on everybody who is opposing them. But I want to believe that at least those who live in democratic countries, in Lithuania, Poland, and others, that they can enjoy a little more freedom and security.
Now, you have listed on your profile on X that you are the president-elect, yet you are still living in exile. What is daily life like for you not being able to live in your own country?
You know, in our work as democratic forces in exile, we are following many aims. The first aim is to release political prisoners and to release our country from dictatorship. So simultaneously, I have to keep in touch with people on the ground who at the moment real hostages of this regime, just to keep people's spirit, to keep people mobilized, to ensure them that we are continuing our fight and encourage them to keep them safe until the moment of opportunity comes. Secondly, we are working much on the international arena. We are building democratic institutions in exile at the moment, but still when the moment of changes come to Belarus, we already have these democratic institutions working. Also, we are formalizing a relationship with the countries and institutions. You know that in 2020, Lukashenko wasn't recognized as legitimate leader of Belarus, but democratic countries recognize me as president-elect, and they are working with us, with democratic forces. And for example, instead of sending ambassadors to Minsk, they're sending special envoys to work with us. And of course, we are being vocal about political prisoners in our country, about atrocities, about repressions, and demand release of all people. Also, we are working a lot on accountability. You know, Lukashenko's regime has long list of crimes against humanity, dragging our country into the war, hijacking of airplane, kidnapping of Ukrainian children from occupied territories. And I'm totally sure that we have to use international mechanism of justice already now to bring those who are responsible for these crimes to accountability. And, you know, simultaneously working in different fields and explaining to the democratic world that without free and democratic Belarus, there will be no security and peace in actually in whole Europe, and explain how the fate of Belarus and Ukraine are interconnected. I have to remind all the time that yes, Lukashenko dragged our country into the war, but we have to distinguish Belarusian regime and Belarusian people. Belarusian people are fully on the side of Ukrainians, and we are supporting them as much as we can. We can't like provide missiles or money to Ukrainians, but we can help with our solidarity. Our military volunteers fighting in Ukraine, our partisans are working inside Belarus. We understand that the victory of Ukrainians means victory of Belarus as well.
This is very personal for you because your husband remains in a Belarus prison, but he has been held incommunicado for a year. Given what happened to Navalny, how worried are you about your husband's well-being?
Yeah, actually, this death of or murder of Navalny resonate with me a lot because actually I don't know if my husband is alive. I haven't known from him for a year already. A lawyer is not allowed to come. Letters are not delivered at all. So I don't know what's going on with him. And the same with some other political prisoners. And it's like you are going to bed with thoughts about your husband, waking up with the same thoughts, and you just don't know how to help. You're like fighting, you see that the whole democratic world with you trying to help, but sometimes I see some undecisiveness from world powers, to punish dictators, to punish tyrannies, and sometimes you feel abandoned and forgotten, and how to deal with your personal grief and with the grief of the whole nation. It's not understandable.
Yeah, what is that like for you? I know you were saying that it's difficult waking up and thinking about him and not knowing if he's around, but how do you continue to push on having that hanging over you?
Honestly speaking, people in prisons is my main motivation, why I'm continuing to fight, and why people of Belarus actually continue to fight, because we are all people of Belarus responsible for those who sacrificed their freedom, some of their lives, for future of Belarus. And also we found many allies in the world who want to help us. Maybe it's not enough tools sometimes it's not actually enough political will for helping, but I have no other choice. I have to return my data to my children, or data to the children, and just to return thousands like fathers and mothers to their families as well. And this is what keeps me up.
I want to ask you, what does today's development signal to you about how Vladimir Putin sees this war with Ukraine and any of his opponents that may be in the way of it?
Regime of Putin doesn't see no Ukraine, no Belarus as separate independent state. They see our countries as like appendix to like Soviet Empire. And but Ukrainians and Belarusians said they decisive no to this Russian ego, and we want to actually return to our roots. We want to be part of European family of countries, and no one external dictator can say how our country should develop. It's the will and power of people of Ukraine and Belarus. And if in Ukraine, Russia is fighting with missiles and tanks, they're ruining cities, in Belarus, it's creeping occupation. We see how Russia interferes into our media field, education, military, economic sphere. They rewrite our history. There is process of Russification. They want to subjugate our country with help of dictator Lukashenko, who is fully on the side of Putin. Lukashenko is actually selling our country piece by piece to Putin just to stay in power. So, of course, in this situation, Ukraine and the Belarusian people need support of the whole democratic world, because we are not just defending our lands. We are defending democratic values, which democratic countries already enjoy and take it for granted. But I always say to our democratic allies, if we will not win in Ukraine and Belarus, it will embolden dictators. And who knows, maybe the next doors that tyranny will knock will be yours.
And I wanted to ask you about that because there are discussions around the world, but specifically in North America, about aid for Ukraine in this war against Russia. The number of people in Canada who believe that Canada is offering too much support to Ukraine is actually on the rise. What is your message to those people right now?
I often hear now, it's a pity, but I hear about fatigue. Fatigue of the war in Ukraine, fatigue of other dictatorship. But, tell about fatigue to people in prisons, who are being tortured and humiliated every day. Tell about fatigue to soldiers in cold trenches in Ukraine who are defending their values that you are enjoying. I'm absolutely sure that now it's moral obligation of every person in democratic world to contribute to the victory of Ukraine and Belarus, because it will be defeat of tyranny, of evil. I understand it's so difficult to sacrifice with cozy life, or some higher prices, I don't know, on products, but just think more globally. Now, I want to repeat, now enemy is at our doors. But if they feel impunity, if they will not feel consequences for what they're doing in our region, so they will become bold and will become threat to the whole world. It's like fight between democracy and autocracy and tyranny at the moment. And believe me, democracy is very, very easy to lose.